Okay. Hey everyone, this is Andy. Sorry for the short delay. I am not used to streaming from YouTube, so I made a couple of mistakes and had to fix them. My apologies. So, as I mentioned in the stream, as I mentioned in the tweets and such, I am going to be drawing a Hollowness Grub. Because that's the... Aside from the knight himself, that's pretty much what everyone associates with the game, and honestly I love their look. They're just plain amazing. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Alright, so last time when I drew the knight, I found that it was definitely a learning experience. So I decided I'd start with a larger brush size for drawing the outline. So here goes. I almost forgot my little glove. Alrighty, here goes. Please excuse the slight messiness. I found it's easier to just erase, to be a little sloppy and then erase later on. Because I'm not a particularly good artist yet. I'm gonna have to adjust that a little. Just a little too wide. But yeah, I've found that it's easier to work with bigger line art than I actually need, because then I can trim it away and make for something that looks better in the end. At the moment, I'm working on the lower body. That's actually one of the little feet that you can see in the game. Yeah, the mouth's also a pretty important part of it because that's most of what makes it cute. Also, the big, shiny little eye. Right. So the next step is to draw the little back feet. The feet in the the feet in the background. So this music was actually suggested by a viewer. It's something called Windswept, and it looks like it cut off for a moment. It'll be fine though. It's medieval fantasy music. Hopefully it'll kick back on. Alrighty, so moving on. Yeah, the grubs are just absolutely adorable in the Hollow Knight game. Because they're in little glass jars. I'm sure most people know this already. But they're in little glass jars that almost look like they've been trapped there. And the only way they get freed is if the knight comes in and basically breaks the jar for them. And then they get really excited when they see the knight too. Just a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. My sound sometimes randomly decides to turn itself off, so I apologize. Alright. I think that's more or less got the basic outline. I think I did pretty good. Comparatively speaking. So I'm going to zoom in now, and now I have to trim it down a little because it's still very messy. Yeah, I apologize for the art scuff. I am still learning a lot about how to do art properly. And I figure it's better to be a little bit sloppy and get stuff done than to try to get it perfect. Eventually I will get the skill, but it's much better to focus on doing something that actually can produce art, to actually produce art, than to focus on trying to do it the best that I can, because I can always improve it later. It's a nice thing about digital drawing. It's much harder to draw very well if you are on a if you're using actual paper and such. So the cleaning, which is the stage I'm doing now, usually takes a little while. Because, as you saw, my line art is a little messy. But that's okay. Messy is, honestly, I don't know that there's all that many artists who don't make at least a little bit of a mess when they're doing the initial line art. So we'll just trim away carefully at the lines with the eraser here. Until I get it down to something that, because you can already see it's the top part where I've cleaned looks much nicer. That's the big advantage of using thick lines as opposed to the narrow lines I was trying to do the first time, because it means you can trim away more of them. Now, there's a couple spots I'll probably have to touch up just a little. There. Yep. We gotta make these eyes look really nice, because that's mostly honestly, that's probably 3/4 of the cuteness of the hollowness grubs right there. The fact that they have those big wide puppy dog eyes. Puppy grub eyes. Yeah, sometimes even though I'm cleaning, I realize that I either touch away or I have to find a spot where I didn't quite connect the lines as carefully because the doesn't matter as much, but I like having a nice connected look to the whole thing. Might cut off a little too much there. There we go. And yeah, just sometimes it's so one of the challenges of drawing, especially cleaning, is when you realize you've made a slight mistake and you need to fix it, because it's way too easy to end up going overboard in trying to clean it up. And honestly, for the line art, it doesn't quite matter so much. I'll probably draw some more Hollow Knight characters in addition to the Knight and the Grub, the Knight that I drew last week and the Grub I'm drawing this week. Because honestly, one of the things I like about those characters is that they have nice straight lines. They make it very easy to for a relatively inexperienced artist like me to follow along. And that's another reason why the Hollow Knight art, just character designs in general, is so eye-catching, because they are fairly straightforward and simple. Go. So they end up being much more memorable than designs that are fancier but have entirely too much detail. You know, even the iconic characters like the Knight, Hornet, the Grubs, obviously, even the Hollow Knight himself, are all they don't have huge details. They just are. They're just very straightforward. What you see is what you get. You don't have to look very deeply for hidden details. So I'm getting close. So about half of it's done. And some of it shouldn't need much cleaning, because I didn't do a half-bad job of drawing the lines to begin with, I think. Scroll down and keep working. Yeah, and that's another thing that I really like about the Grubs. They have a very, I want to say narrow. I mean, the little feet they have here, you wouldn't think they could move very fast, but they really do. I suspect if they weren't caged, you could never catch them. So, yeah, this is coming along pretty nicely. Despite my rather sloppy line art. One of the big advantages of using a nice thick eraser. I mean, using a thick line and then trimming it with an eraser, because then it's much easier to trim away excess. It's much easier to trim away excess black than it is to try to draw really nice thin straight lines. Especially for I've only just had this. I haven't had this tablet very long. It's a nice tablet, but I'm just not very experienced using it yet. Right. Getting close to done with cleaning up the line art. Then I get to start filling it in with colors. This is a little simpler in some respects than actually than the night that I drew last week, because there's not as much shading in the example picture I'm using. Gotta be a little careful with that eraser. On the hind feet. The ones that it actually stands on when it is inside the cage. The glass jar, I mean. Just about done. A little more cleaning to do, but not much. Coming along pretty nicely. Just about done with this, with the line art. Then I can get started on the fun part, the coloring. I decided last week that the best thing to do when I was actually coloring is to start a new layer so I don't lose the lines essentially painting over them. It's not perfect, but it works. There's a little more ink there. Oh. Yeah. A little too much ink, but I'll have to, so this is nice music, but I don't want to play it every time. I'll have to look through my own music and see if I can't find some nice, quiet, relaxing tunes to turn into a playlist. Alright. There we go. Just about done with the line art anyway. Ready? Yeah, that's looking really nice. I can actually, that's pretty close to the way I wanted it. So now I am going to save it because I don't really want to end up. Alright, now I will add a new layer. And now I start on the fun part, the colors. Of course, part of that is getting the colors right. So, the easiest part is the eye. So zoom back in. Yep, there's just a little bit of white in the eye too, which I'll get, but it's easier to paint black on top first instead of trying to paint around a little tiny circle of white. He does it. Right. Now I'll do that with a smaller brush. Bigger, I think. Okay, and now I need a slightly gray to do the little dot down below. A little bigger. Actually, I kind of made that a little too big, so needs to. That looks pretty good. All right. Next is 3 shades of green, various shades of green, and a little bit of red for the actual mouth. So move it over to the green. This is where it gets tricky because what looks like a good color isn't always. Let's see, sometimes the only way to do it is to actually maybe a little lighter. Yeah, I think that'll work. So carefully paint it in. I'm going to do this a little bit different than I did last time. It basically just, I want to zoom in to touch it up a bit once I get done, but basically sort of just trace around the black lines with a small pen, and then here we go. This is what I need to do. Because that's probably the trickiest part, aside from simply getting the shapes of the lines correct, is getting the I think it needs to be a bit more bent. There we go. Okay, so now I can go back to carefully filling in the line, filling around the black. Since the black is on a different layer, I don't want to cover it up. And this time I'll zoom in a bit more. Make it just a little easier to... This is why I'm using a small brush, because unfortunately it's really easy to... You saw with the big brush, I should have shrunk it a little bit. But with the big brush, it's really easy to end up painting too much, so small brushes like this work really well. For purposes of just carefully edging and such, which is basically what I'm doing right now. And that's why the zoom, because it's unfortunately a little easy when I'm zoomed out to go the wrong way, like to accidentally have a zig where I should have zagged. Right. I may as well trace around the eye too. One thing that one of my viewers, who's an artist themselves, said last week is that you just need to focus on just doing what you can, not worrying about whether it's perfect. It's good advice. It's a little easy to forget, especially when you're in the middle of trying to do something that's difficult. But it's true. The harder you try to get it right, especially if you're not quite as skilled as you'd like to be, the easier it is to end up making mistakes which require lots of correction, we'll say. It takes longer in some respects to try to do it well than it does to just do what you can. Which is one of the reasons I'm not worrying about didn't worry about trying to get the trim the black down as much as I could have. Because another thing that artist said was that if they can't really see it beyond about 50% zoom, it's not going to really be noticeable in the final product. It was good advice. I'm glad that I listened, because it's really easy to think that it should have been better. Especially for somebody like me. Because my skill is not as good as I'd like. Now that's another thing. One thing I am trying to work on. Hi, Ninian. Thanks for stopping by. You can probably see, but I'm drawing one of the Hollow Knight grubs. Kame gave me some really good tips last time, so I'm trying to take advantage of that. Yeah, I really like these little guys, and they're just so adorable in the game. I didn't realize it. I should have expected it, but I didn't realize they'd actually made, do one of those because I went a little too far over. There we go. But I didn't realize they'd actually made plushies. I might get one of them. Because it's hard to go wrong with one of these guys. Almost. That works, though. I think I've got a little more to trace around before I start filling in for real. Oh, I know. I could not believe it. It's like you never think of these guys as being actually cute. You never think that they'd be they could have made this cute, but they really, really are. They did just a phenomenal job with it. Alright, one more here. And yeah, I think the lines that I've drawn have come pretty close to actually capturing the spirit of the grub, because you can see it really does it actually, I'm actually pretty happy with how closely I matched the overall look. Go. Now I'm going to, since these are also the same shady green, just go ahead and get them taken care of really fast. Although I will probably fill them in the fully because they're relatively small. Yeah, I tend to scribble a little. It'd probably be easier if I did straight brush strokes like this, but I don't have quite as much confidence in my ability to draw them, so I am working on that. Hi, Vitor. Thank you. I appreciate it. Still a work in progress, but I'm liking the way it's turning out so far. Still got a fair bit of drawing to do, but really the most of this is just, at this point, getting the, making sure I don't go overboard when I fill. Alright, I think that is all of the separated parts, so the rest of this, I'll zoom out a little and increase the brush size because it's going to take a little while. And I'm not going to worry about getting it perfect, just getting, I can always fill in a little. I just want to be careful not to accidentally paint over a part that the parts that I so carefully lined. Oh yeah, I mean, they are extremely cute. You wouldn't believe it. Although, truthfully, I think there's a enemy that mimics a grub, and it's like, you always wonder after you meet one of them if it's gonna be a real grub, or if it's one of the mimics. But yeah, they're one of the very few completely harmless creatures in Hallownest. Yeah, this is also slightly tricky because I've got to be really careful not to accidentally draw all over the black. Which is part of the reason I did the edging earlier, because it took a little while, but it actually probably saved me time because then I have boundaries to work with, especially here. Would have been, unfortunately, really easy to draw those too far. I mean, there's undo, but, you know, it gets kind of pointless to draw, undo, draw, undo. This is coming along. This is coming along really nicely. Just need to, just don't want to get carried away or try to hurry. Time I spend taking my time and doing it right is time that I'm not spending having to undo or paint it back over. Yeah, it's hard to paint with big brush strokes. I keep wanting to do scribbling, because that's what I always did. It was really hard sometimes to control. So scribbling, making lots of little short strokes, I mean, is an easier way, but it actually is harder in some respects. Because I'm finding that as I actually buckle down and do it, it doesn't go... I have more control than I thought it did. As long as I move slow and careful. As one of my teachers has said to me occasionally, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Basically, when you take your time to do it smoothly, even though it's slow, you end up being better than if you try to hurry. Just holds together much better in the long run. Right? That looks like it's almost done. It's a little darker of a green shade than I think the example one did, but I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters much. It's a nice shade. So, next step is... Oh, what did I click? There we go. I clicked something I didn't expect. Alright, next step is I need a much lighter shade. Shrink it back down because I want to trim again. To be the underbelly section. Right. And zoom in a little more. That's not quite light enough. Let's go with this. Let's see. Yeah, I think that'll work, as long as there's a contrast. I am going to, at some point, add a little black there to more denote the mouth. I made the mouth a little too wide, I think, but that's okay. Messed up a little bit there. Yeah, the shading's a little bit tricky sometimes, but I think this will come out pretty nicely. There we go, that's better. Alright. Now I am going to increase the brush size a little, decrease the zoom, and do what I did before. And getting close to done with the underbelly. I think the color match, the colors are pretty close to the original. I think I did probably use a slightly darker green for the overcoat, but you can tell it's a grub, and that's the important thing. There we go. That, just carefully. Yeah, this is a much easier subject than the knight was, because the knight has lots of shading. The knight picture that I picked has a lot of shading on his let's see, hard to decide what color this should be, but I think that maybe will work, because it's more of almost a yellowish green. As usual. Only one other color after this, actually, and then I'll go over for quick touch-ups here and there. But after that, the grub should be done. So aside from this, which the muzzle I think is, I'm not sure if that's the proper term. I'm not sure what that's called on a bug. But I do know for mammals it's generally called the muzzle. So unless somebody knows what it's called, I'll probably stick with that. But the muzzle is a almost greenish yellow, which is why I picked this shade. Alright, that is covered. So I will zoom back out. Not too much because I don't need as much. And just I'm sure there's lots of things that I could learn. There's lots of techniques I don't know about art, so I'm definitely always interested in learning more, but it's very soothing. Just quietly taking something and making it into reality. Or in my case, referring to a image that somebody else has made into reality and creating an acceptable facsimile of it. Here we go. Just here. All right. So the inner part is a slightly purple. I'm not sure exactly what color that is, but it's the mouth, the inside part of the mouth, so it's going to be a reddish pink, I think. Kind of a darker one too, so we'll go with this. Yeah, I think that'll work. Yep, just a little bit more, and then I'll touch it up. But I'm happy with how this looks like it's coming out. Oh, that's right. I'll need to do a little bit of black right at the bottom of the mouth because I drew it just a tiny bit wider than normal, but it's okay. It can be excited. It can be slightly more excited. Switch back to black. Do that little. There we go. So now I'll zoom out so we can get a nice big picture. Alright, I'm liking this, and there's a few spots I can see I need to touch up. Unfortunately, one of the reasons I decided to leave the touch-up for last is because I can actually use the eyedropper, if I can find it, to copy the color. So instead of having to spend a lot of time trying to match the shade, it just does it for me. It's very nice. Yep, just gonna watch for these little white bits here and there. Just make sure they're filled in. Go up here because there's I could definitely see even on the zoomed out version that there were a few white spots that needed to be cleaned up. Touching up can take a little while, but it's absolutely worthwhile. It's part of how you how you make sure it looks. I mean, it doesn't seem like it would matter. Some of the stuff's not going to be visible at a higher zoom. But the way I figure it is, I may as well, if I'm going to do it, I may as well take a little bit of extra time to do it right. As long as I'm up here, go ahead and touch up there. Looks like the music ended. Go ahead and get that restarted. One thing I'm not going to be using here is blending. I used it with the night because with all the shading, it made for a nice smooth transition between the shadowed parts and the lighter parts. But for the scrub, the lighting, it doesn't seem like it has the same level of directed lighting. So I'm not going to worry too much about it this time. Right. That'll work. Lighter green's a little harder to spot the white because it's a lot closer to that color. But it works. Okay, and we'll fix up the limbs, the feet, I guess. I don't want to call them paws because paws are a mammal thing, but this is arguably, aside from all the art is important, but personally I consider this part to be one of the most important parts. I mean, I'm a bit of a sloppy artist, not too bad, but if you saw the first parts, the line art, it was definitely needing touch up afterwards, which is okay. But this is the part where I can basically take that slight sloppiness and just carefully trim away at it. Kind of like, almost like a bonsai tree. In its own way. Yep, this is coming along really well. Although I have the original artist, I don't know for sure who that is, but I have the original artist to thank for making a relatively something that was relatively simple but could still be drawn so effectively. To thank for this. I'm not good enough as an artist to draw something, to come up with something like this. Although I will definitely be thinking up stuff that I can look at drawing on my own, because this is important. Taking stuff that other people have drawn is an important part of art, but at the same time, eventually you have to spread to create your own compositions, not just simply duplicate what other people have drawn. And I'm not there yet, but I think I'm closer than I ever thought I was before. Parts here and there, and then I want to touch up the eye, which I save for last because it is the easiest part to actually touch up. Okay, eyedropper. And carefully rounding out the little bits of black. Alright, that worked out nicely. Now I will get the last the little light patches here, because they're important too. Alright. Gonna zoom out again to make sure it looks the way I want it to. Aw, yeah, that looks great. It's very cuddly. I think I made mine a little sad, maybe? Like maybe the Hollow Knight had to turn back because it couldn't get there yet? Alright, last little bit, and the most important part. Well, okay, not the most important part, but the part I like the best. But I gotta sign the art. Do my usual little cat ears on the eye. Okay. Well, I believe at this point I can consider the grub from Hollow Nest to be done. Thank you to everyone who came and watched, Nidian and Victor. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope you liked watching me draw the grub. I certainly enjoyed drawing it. Until next time, Utsa Kitty. So with that, I am going to go ahead and end the stream. But thank you again for coming. Until next time. Oh, and if you like this, please consider liking the stream, and if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much. And I will be back on YouTube on Sunday for my regular Hollow Knight stream, and then on Monday I will be continuing a little bit further in. Thank you, Jiru Gameshi. I appreciate that. That's my intent here. Looks like I'll have to figure the chat box didn't work as well as I would have liked. Sorry. I'll have to fix that for next time. That was the one thing I was afraid of. But I should be able to get it. Alrighty. And I bid you all adieu. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching.